All right, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Premier League Wrap. I'm going to go through all the games from the weekends, big takeaways, how it pans out for the different teams, what their outlook looks from here. There's no better way than to start from the very first game of the weekend. Spurs beat Wolves. Tottenham come away with a 1-0 win, another 3 points for Antonio Conte as they continue their good start to the season after a 2-all draw with Chelsea last week. Not the greatest game in the world, but these are the type of games that Spurs need to start winning and eke out, and it's basically under Conte's specialty. This is the type of games that he gets results from. Wolves actually started this game quite well, played very well in the first half, but for all their possession and for all a lot of the tidy players that they have, they've added Gonzalo Guedes from Valencia. They just can't really get a finish with this group they have. It's almost like they're playing City style football from last season with that. I don't mean as good as City. Obviously, they're not near as talented in terms of players, but they've a lot of tidy on the ball players. But Raúl Jimenez returned to the bench, and that's the kind of player they need. They need a striker up top because for all the possession they had and good interlink and good build up, they didn't really have many kind of clear cut chances. Tottenham, on the other hand, ultimately the difference here, they have Harry Kane. The goal that he took was just that's the type of goal. Nathan Collins is going to be sick with himself. Kind of he's jostling with Kane at the back post. He lets him go for 2 seconds. Collins zigs, Kane zags, and the ball's in the back of the net. One of the things for Spurs is Son is, I suppose, it's 3 games now where he doesn't have a goal return or a goal involvement. I wouldn't be worried too much about it. He's going to round into form, probably take him a couple of games to get going. But this Spurs team looks solid. Like they just look controlled. And one of the big things for me is Perisic getting in there at left wing back. He plays much higher up the pitch than what they have on the right side with Emerson Royale. And it's kind of the way Spurs' formation is starting to look. Obviously, they no Christian Romero in here. Sanchez plays quite deep. Dyer kind of comes in towards the halfway line, and then Ben Davies, our left centre back, actually plays quite high from there. So it's not like a traditional tree at the back. It's almost like in a kind of diagonal 45-degree line that kind of comes down from right to left, with Perisic really kind of playing as a winger, and then Son kind of coming in as a forward. So yeah, but a good 3 points for Spurs, and it kind of this is the kind of start they needed, a bit of early season momentum, even though it probably wasn't as dominant as their open weekend win over Southampton. Next game of the day, this was the TV game, Everton Forest, a 1-all draw, which Everton escaped with. Look, this game was decent, I suppose. Damari Gray gets a late winner after Brennan Johnson opened the scoring for Forest after Jordan Pickford parried a shot away. But for Everton, it's going to be looked at as a big opportunity lost. I mean, look, the late draw and the comeback gives Frank Lampard a bit of breathing space, so he's not under huge, gigantic pressure after losing 3 straight. But this is one that's they're gonna feel probably got away from them. Um, just in the fact that like, look, Everton's big thing at the moment is they're desperately missing Dominic Calvert-Lewin. This is a team that without Calvert-Lewin, they've experimented with Anthony Gordon as a false nine. They brought in Rondon there at the weekend, but if they're relying in Rondon as any sort of, makeshift striker, or if they expect him to fulfill a role that's going to be any more than i- coming in at cup games, coming in at lower league cup games, coming in at like for the last 10, 15 minutes to be a body about, they're gonna be struggling. And particularly now as it looks like Chelsea ramps up for Anthony Gordon. The fee they're talking is like 50, 60 million. If they offer 60 million for Gordon, it's a big fee to turn down. But at this stage, given where Everton are, and given the probably a lack of depth in this squad, if they lose Gordon, it's not really going to be worth the 60 million for them because it's one of their best players, and it looks like a team that's probably might be in another relegation scrap this year. So I don't know if they want to go down that road, but be interesting to see how that plays out. Forest, it's a point away from home after a win over West Ham last week. They got Spurs coming up next, so these are the types of points they could be getting, but they'll probably be kicking themselves that they didn't leave here with all 3 points, just because the type of goal they conceded to Barry Gray, it's just like it gets a long ball over the back. Like it was a good run from Gray and it was a good pick out from Pickford, but like if your line is that high, like Forest aren't Liverpool, to be giving Demarai Gray that type of space. He's had an exceptional touch taking the ball down, but like that's an avoidable goal at this level, and one they'll be ruining, I'm sure. Who are we off to next? Leicester City, Southampton. Leicester go 1-0 up in this game through James Maddison, and then a double from Che Adams gives Southampton all 3 points. It's rocky at Leicester. Like he may not be under as much pressure as what we might think, like the likes of Steven Gerrard and Lampard is, and a couple of the other names that are kind of under the hot seat to start. But there's something a bit off at Leicester. This is a game that you'd think they'd win. I mean, they've already blown leads before in their opener where they came back and blew. I think it was a 2-0 lead they might have had. So like Madison's goal, well taken. But Che Adams, yeah, I mean he didn't start like what the first two games of the season. He comes in, gets a double, and the second goal that he got, the volley was just sensational. So a big win for Southampton, who are going to welcome United next week. But Leicester City, yeah, it's starting to get a little bit dicey for Brendan Rodgers. The big week, this is the biggest week arguably of their season coming up, just in the fact that like they're going to see if they're going to keep on to Madison, if they can keep on to Wes Fofana, who's linked with Chelsea, if they can keep on to Yuri Tielemans, who's linked with Arsenal. But yeah, they've got Stockport today in the League Cup, and then they've got to go to Stamford Bridge next week. Now maybe after Chelsea getting throttled by Leeds, maybe that'll be somewhat of an easier tie. But I'd always be expecting the retaliation, so it's not going to get any easier for them. And we'll see if they have Fofana and Tielemans in that team. They were both missing from the Leicester starting lineup there at the weekend with their links to Arsenal and Chelsea respectively. But yeah, it's not going to get any easier. On Southampton side, big 3 points, and maybe let's see if they can get Che Adams going a bit. I mean, Che Adams was good last season for them. Got injured about halfway during the season, and they had a kind of rotating stock of Armando Broja and Armstrong in there as well. But yeah, if they can get anything from Che Adams as a focal point, if James Ward-Prowse obviously in midfield, the new player they got in from Francesco Mara looks like a player as well. So yeah, they're still going to be under the pump, Southampton, but like a much needed win away from home for them. But not going to get any easier with United coming off a win over Liverpool, which I'll get to later. Next up, then from there we have uh, who do we have here? Crystal Palace and Villa. 3-1 Crystal Palace. Brace from Willie Zaha and another goal late from Jan-Philippe Mateta gives Palace a good win at home. I'm bullish on Palace. I think this team is going to be good. Like they've Zaha either as a winger up top. Mateta and Edward time shared a lot last season, but they got returns from both of those players. Michael Elise looks like a real good player. We'll see if he can get back into the starting lineup. I think he really rides Jordan Ayew for a lot of the pressing, a lot of the tracking back he does. But and then Eb Easy there as a 10, like just a gifted dribbler, someone that can just go by someone with shimmies and feints, not necessarily, blistering speed. But yeah, that's a big statement for Palace at home. For Villa, yeah, it's going to be huge pressure for Steven Gerrard. Like they've had a lot of money spent. They brought in like over the last couple of years, Danny Ings, Ollie Watkins from Brentford. They bring in Philippe Coutinho. They bring in Emi Buendia. They obviously lost like Diego Carlos there, who they brought in from Seville with a ruptured Achilles. Lucas Digne, like there's been huge investment in this squad, so they get absolutely piped 3-1 on the road at Palace will be massively concerning. But the thing with them is they've got to like find out what their best formation is and who their best personnel is. It's like each week it'll be either changing Watkins starting up top to they'll play two up top with Ings and Watkins, and they'll play a 10. Then they'll bring in like either Coutinho and Leon Bailey as wide players, and then they'll be dropped the next week. So they need to figure out their best team, and at the moment, it doesn't look like they have any idea as to who that is. So that's obviously Jared's job. They have good players in there, they have good options, but this is a team kind of lacking any sort of structure. And until they get that in, I can't really see things improving for them massively. But as I always say in the Premier League, there's always next week. Like we see teams that start seasons badly, most notably Arsenal. And if you do have a talented squad, you can turn it around. But We'll see what they can do next week at home to West Ham, who are also on struggle street to put it bottom of the table. So yeah, this is a big week for Villa. They need to bounce back in a big way. The last 3 o'clock game before we move on to the 5:30, Fulham 3-2 over Brentford. Big win for Fulham. Like this is a team that I would have pegged for relegation at the start of the season, but I mean, this is a free scoring game. These games were good back in the Championship, and they look like they're going to deliver in the Premier League as well. Brentford coming off their 4-0 hiding up United. Um, and then Fulham take the lead through the scrappiest goal you're going to see through Bobby De Cordova-Reid, Yao Polina off corner, and then Mitrovic just being a terror. Um, Brentford look like they're going to be able to score. Good goal from Norgard. Ivan Toney was a menace in this game as well. But it's more defensively for these two teams that, unfortunately for them, they're not going to be playing each other every week. And while we've seen to start the season, both of these teams can seemingly score and they're quite confident going forward, it's going to be at the back for them because, as I said, they're not going to be playing each other. They're going to be playing against different defenses, and you're going to be playing against teams that are just as capable on attack. So a good win for Fulham. Um, Brentford, maybe a hangover from last week's, probably one of the best wins in the club's history, a 4-0 thrashing of Manchester United. So it just shows you how quickly you can get brought back down to earth in the Premier League. The 5:30, Arsenal at the top of the league. I mean, it is Bournemouth. Look, they're after coming off a shellacking against Manchester City 4-0 back at home, but Arsenal got going early in this game, and it was always going to be one-way traffic. Odegaard with a double after 11 minutes, and then Saliba with a just a peach of a goal, cut back onto the left peg, and he finishes it like a striker. Like it was really polished, composed for Arsenal, and it could have been more. Gabby Jesus had a goal ruled out for offside, but he's really the focal point here, and he's probably the big story to start the season. And the fact that he looks like a new player at Arsenal, and not so much in that he's a new player, because we did see this initially for him when he first came in at City in those first couple of months where he usurped Aguero from the team. But he's not kind of City are so structured and they're so everything has to be pass, move, played the ball in certain positions, 15, 16 passes in a row before, a shot is taken. And we seen it with Jack Grealish last season, just in how like he was a free spirit at Villa, someone that would take the ball to halfway line, go with players, create stuff, draw fouls. And at City a lot, he's like hugging the left touch line. He gets the ball, he passes back to Cancelo, he moves, he drifts in. It's also structured to Pep's ideology and philosophy, and I'm sure drilled to no end at training. But when you see a player taken out of that, like out of that environment, like we've seen with Gabby Jesus, he was saying a little bit last week when they beat Leicester City. He nearly got a goal after bullying Johnny Evans off the ball, and Danny Ward ultimately produced a good save. But like that first goal in the lead up to Odegaard, he gets the ball, turns a defender, runs up the pitch, goes by one, plays a nice little angled pass into Martinelli, who gets in behind. He fires it across goal, and then all of a sudden, Odegaard after I think it was is a keeper save where the ball pinned around there, and Odegaard taps it into a net. Like, and then similarly to their second goal, Gabby Jesus gets a touch, looks like he's going to save for a shot. Odegaard takes it off him and then bangs it into the net. Like it's Arsenal are looking good, and as much as I mentioned there with Leicester being a big week for them, if they can get Yuri Tielemans in there to play alongside Thomas Partey, as opposed to Granit Xhaka, who, while he's on an upswing over the last couple of months, we've known what Xhaka is at this point. He's a couple of games around from a red card, a brain explosion, doing something wild, and Yuri Tielemans is just not going to give you that. He's going to be composed. He's going to be cool. And he's going to be someone that Arsenal need in that centre of midfield. So let's see. Look, they got Fulham at home this week, Arsenal. Let's see how long they can keep this up for. But for the moment, this is a team that's in red hot form. I'm not going to go out and say they're title challengers. I did think that ultimately they'd get top four this season. Maybe the projection could even be a bit light. They could be up there in the mix. Not ready necessarily to say they're going to go toe to toe with City, but they'll be thereabouts for second or third by the looks of this early season form. To start the weekend on the Sunday, we had Leeds United and Chelsea. This was the TV game and did not see this coming. I thought after last week with Chelsea really probably getting the better of Spurs in a 2-all draw, that they probably quietened and probably alleviated a lot of that early preseason pressure because they looked like quite dysfunctional. They got tore up 4-0 by Arsenal in the US in a preseason game, and there was a lot of like uncertainty. Tuchel kind of going mad in the preseason. They need to get more players. A lot of their projected signings getting nicked by Barcelona. But this was a shambles. Like, I mean, and it's I think Tuchel was basically going on because there was a particularly after Brentford ran United off the pitch, there's a lot of emphasis as to looking at the running stats, and Leeds completely outran Chelsea in this game. And Tuchel Watt did make some good points in saying, look, one of the goals we conceded was down to Edward Mendy up in a howler. The other was from a set piece off a Rodrigo header. So you can do all the running you kind of want, but if you make mistakes like that, it's going to be hard to win football games. And there is an element of truth in that, but Leeds were just better. Like if you watch this game, they were suffocating. They move at the same time. There's a particular period where obviously if Chelsea are playing three at the back, they're going to try and progress that ball up to the midfield, use their wing backs. They play with little triangles, I suppose, with the wing back, centre back, midfielder. Same on the other side. Same between the centre back and the two midfielders, and that's how they kind of can work the ball and play from the back. But they didn't have any time during this game. Aronson looks like a real player for Leeds. Jack Harrison's in some of the best form I've seen him after a good finish to last season. And Rodrigo's in career form. I think the guy got 6 goals last year, and he's already got four in 3 games already. Now we'll see how long that can last because we've seen similar starts from Mikel Antonio and the likes at West Ham last season. So just because someone's in a purple patch doesn't mean it's necessarily going to continue the entire season. But there were big concerns with Leeds heading into this season, given the fact that they'd lost Calvin Phillips to City, they'd lost Rafinha to Barcelona. But the way they work as a unit, and Coach Marsh, with full credit to him, has implemented these Roja, Tyler Adams, Aronson into his new system. Even with Bamford going down again, Rodrigo slides in at top. This is a structured unit, and the big thing for me was when they went 3-0 up. You could see from the kick-off, obviously Chelsea are shattered and probably realised the game is completely gone. But Leeds are just as hungry and chasing them and pressing them after. And when you get that type of intensity and enthusiasm, we've seen how hard it was to keep up under Bielsa despite some initial success. But certainly good signs for Leeds and Coach Mark. Like Major League Soccer, it's a go. The other half two game, or the other 2 o'clock game rather, sorry. Brighton 2-0 West Ham. Unbelievable ball from Pascal Gross to Trossard for the second goal, and then they get a early penalty for McAllister. Thilo Kehrer, the new centre back they've got in from PSG, just lunging in and completely. I think he cleaned up Danny Welbeck. Bit needless and not an ideal way at all to make your debut. But I mean, the takeaways from this game are quite simple. Brighton look a lot better than the sum of their parts. You see their team, and like it's kind of been accepted the last couple of seasons as that's Brighton. Um, and obviously, much like Leeds, you're thinking, Yves Bassoum and Cucurella are taken out of this team. But he's converted Trossard and March into wing backs. He's got Lallana playing as a 10. He's got Danny Welbeck doing very good job leading the line up top. Casado looks like a good player. We'll see how long they can keep him. I think with United getting Casemiro, that probably interest has died down, so he'll be a great keep for them. But yeah, Graham Potter is some coach. Like they play good football, they play organised, structured, they follow their game plan, whether it's playing the long ball against United in the first week or playing more football here against the Hammers in London. They're going to be thereabouts in the top half again, and it will be interesting to them. I mean, there's probably a ceiling as to how far this team goes with the talent they have, but much like Leeds, like they're doing a very good job at what they have, and it's a no. We'll see how long even Potter stays, because if he keeps going like this, once one of those big six jobs go or come available, it can't be, or even the England job, depending on how the World Cup goes later in the year, there will be calls for this guy to be getting bigger jobs. And by everything we've seen over how they finished last season, how they've started this season, those calls look justified as well. As for West Ham, yeah, I mean, this is a team that would have had European aspirations that's already in the Europa Conference League. and it's a bit of a disaster start for them. Obviously they had the result against Forest. Now they go down 2-0 at home to Brighton. City, you can forgive losing on the opening day. Uh, but for them, yeah, like I mean, he brings in Skamaka for 35 million Moyes over the summer, and there was clear limitations on how far this team could go with Michael Antonio last season. And if Michael Antonio is leading the line, he went through goal droughts last season, and it's probably why West Ham ultimately kind of fell out of Champions League contention, which they were very much in at one point. I get that he does a lot of running, he does a lot of good things for the team. He's a physical abrasive force, but at some stage you're going to have to play your new 35 million striker, and I probably predict that's going to be this weekend. As well as Maxwell Cornet, like you probably have to find a way to get him in. Fornals hasn't had the greatest start to the season. Ben Rama actually looks sharp in the bits that I've seen of him, and particularly against Forest. So maybe you play him as a 10, you play Cornet out wide, you put Scamarco up top, but they need to do something different because the way they've started the season, it's not quite working for David Moyes. And while he does have credit in the bank, they'll need to turn around results quite quickly. To the half four, the sports washing super classic. Uh, yeah, look, this was a great game and probably arguably the game of the weekend, but it probably does need to be mentioned. Look, if you don't say anything, you're probably complicit in it, and there is an element of obviously, look, I'm doing a weekend roundup of the football. I don't want to be going through every team's and every club's story and backstory and controversies. But at the same time, this Newcastle and Man City game is in the backdrop of a Saudi citizen getting sentenced to 34 years for tweeting and retweeting either dissident stuff or pro women's rights, as well as like what looks like to be the ordered execution of teenagers in Saudi Arabia. Like this is not normal for a Premier League club. But the more that we talk about like Newcastle, Man City, and what a great game it was, which I will, it helps normalize or not rationalize, but like it helps wash away a lot of this other stuff that's going on in the background, which is needless to say dark, murky, um, and going to be hard for the Saudi tourism board to overcome. I mean, we've seen Dubai just as this city are the blueprint here. They've ultimately turned Dubai from a relative obscure place to like one of the premier holiday destinations in the world, and it's true true the likes of, I suppose, soft power like you would see in football clubs. But yeah, I did just want to mention that because anytime, yeah, I suppose the petro states or the petro clubs play each other, you've got to kind of mention it. And I know the majority won't. Like, you're not going to see Talksport, you're not going to see, Sky Sports analyze it like this because it's not good for business, is it? But with regards to what is for good for business was the product they put on the field, and this is probably why they want the Saudis in the first place, is so they can, like Eddie Howe can build this sort of team that can go head to head with the likes of City, and everyone talking about it, and for good reason. It was an absolutely cracking match. Like the big thing I took away from it was, I suppose, just seeing teams go at City and being able to go at City. Because a lot of the times you'll see double banks, teams will sit back and try to do ultimately what we probably saw with Palace against Liverpool. They get one or two breaks and then all of a sudden Eze plays Zaha in behind and they're off. Newcastle went at them like they were intense. Joe Linton's a great midfielder that has been repurposed from a striker. Bruno Guimaraes is a very, very tidy player and probably Newcastle's best. Almiron, he scored the most Almiron goal. Like the guy bundles over himself and the ball hits off his knee and goes to goal. But at least he's going to press and he's going to give you a good work rate. And then Alan St. Maximin, like there is a bit of the Adama Traore to this guy in terms of like he's in like probably the top percentiles in terms of beating players and like taking people on and going past people. But like this guy's got more of a presence and he's got more of a final end product than Adama Traore. That's why Adama Traore probably is on the bench for Wolves. But when St. Maximin looks like this, like he's he's lethal. Like Kyle Walker couldn't live with him. The City centre backs couldn't live with him. He's unpredictable and uncanny, and at times his own teammates don't even know what they're doing. Like, there's something towards the very end of the game where he played the ball and ultimately City turned it over after beating two or three guys. But literally, that was maybe one time after about 6 or 7 runs that he had before that previously, where he took City on and caused them all sorts of problems. And when you get the City team on the back foot, now you need an exceptional dribbler like Saint Maximin, but that was the key of the game for them. Obviously, Kieran Trippier got a fantastic free kick, but the City side, like in full credit to that team, like we seen it last year when they went 2-0 down to West Ham. And we seen it on the weekend when they went 3-1 down. Like this team battles and they hang in the fight and they can come back from odds that seemingly seem out of their hands. And they're just the championship pedigree. Like this is what it is. Like scrappy ball around the box. Haaland, bangs it in. Kieran Trippier quite lucky to get uh stay on the pitch. Actually, I thought it was a really hard challenge on Kevin De Bruyne. It went in knee height, like that probably shouldn't be a red. I kind of wanted it to stay a yellow just for the, you like look as bad as Newcastle are, is what I've said. From a football perspective, you just want to see any team in this league put it up the City because the last thing we want is what we had a repeat of. Was it 2 seasons ago when they were like 19 points up in January, and you're just like, this title race is over. So the longer we get a title race for everyone, the better. But I mean, the last the last goal shows you why that might not be much of a possibility, despite them dropping points, because like the ball De Bruyne plays in for Bernardo Silva. The De Bruyne, he's just I've probably been saying it on a weekly basis. Like, is he Steven Gerrard? Is he Frank Lampard? I think he's the best now. It's just like, just from what I've seen, the Bournemouth game last weekend, the ball he played in this weekend, Haaland comes short and he pings it in between like two or three, like for the Gundogan goal. Like, he's outrageous. So as long as they have him, as long as he's the heartbeat of midfield there, City obviously are going to continue to be City and continue going to put two or three goals, 4 goals was past teams. But big Newcastle would have been, you know, ecstatic to leave with 3 points. This would have been, one of the probably the biggest win of the Eddie Howe era there to start. He's continually got smashed and piped by City. So yeah, hard. I mean, a point is good for him, but he would have felt like he could have came away with all three. And then to the final game, Red Monday, United Liverpool. This was the most surprising result of the weekend for me. Like I just didn't see this coming. Obviously, they lose to Brighton opening day 2-1. Completely outplayed by Brentford 4-0 last week. Liverpool start a bit slow against Fulham. They don't beat Palace, but probably a game they should have won. They had all the ball, they created all the chances, and you just think, right, don't make that mistake 2 games in a row. But whatever it was about United, whether it was Ten Hag making them run like 13 kilometers after the defeat, cancelling their day off, where he just fired a rocket up their arse, or whether there was proper tactical instructions here and personnel changes. Like ultimately for me, well, I thought Liverpool was going to win 3-0 before this game, and well, a lot of my mates had a probably similar consensus 4-1, somewhere in that region. By dropping Ronaldo, and like, look, it depends. I'm firmly on the side that Ronaldo's 37, he's 38, I think he's going to be 38 soon. He's a 5-time Ballon d'Or winner. I don't need to go through his accomplishments and his records and that, but at like this stage of his career, he's not dynamic in terms of like if United if it and it's comical like watching him lead the line when they're out of possession because the opposition centre backs have all the time in the world, and Ronaldo kind of like jogs over and he runs like someone that is like reaching for their wallet when they're at dinner and they want to pay a bill, but they're not actually going to pay the bill. They're just like kind of like, oh, I need to reach in and stretch. But that's how he kind of presses. And ultimately, what it leads to, while he does score goals on the other end, he can get some sensational volleys like we've seen against Atlanta and Spurs. Like United's attack is just less fluid, and even though someone like Anthony Alanga doesn't have anywhere near they're not even in the same universe, but they are in the same team here. And Alanga, you know, he justified his start because he provides dynamism, he provides energy, he provides someone that can press, someone that can run and on the counter. And these are the type of decisions that need to get made. And it's in fairness to Ten Hag, he had some balls to make them. And I do think that's probably the best way for United going forward. Maybe not Alanga, but definitely like Martial, the assist that he got for Rashford on the second goal. Like you've got well, both with Rashford and Martial have been well below their best, and probably what a lot of people thought past it. From what they were a couple of seasons ago, 2 seasons ago, both of these guys got 17 goals each. So if there's players left and they can get in there and they can get back to that level, and you got Rashford on the left, Martial up top, Bruno in the hole, and you've got Jadon Sancho out right, like that's going to be a dynamic, lively attack, and that's what we've seen in the preseason, and that's why they were probably good in the preseason. Um, and then at the back, then if you've got Lissandro Martinez and Malacia, instead of Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw, like Martinez and Malacia both show by good timing, aggressive, good defensively. Like that's just what they need in there. They've like if you think of from where United were a couple of years ago when they did £200 million defense, and it was like Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, Maguire, and Luke Shaw, or Tellez, and they were just getting like continually beat up. And it's like now they've got Varane, Martinez, um, Malacia, and Dallo. Like you've got new faces in there. So it will be interesting to see going to Southampton next week because that's going to be the big test for United. It's all right and well getting up for when the club's on the verge of crisis or on the verge of a blow up if they lose and get trashed by Liverpool, which they did 5-0 last season. Um, they can get up for those derby games, but the as odd as it sounds, it's going to be the mundane 12:30 away to Southampton, a team they should beat. Can they replicate that performance? Because that is the standard for them now. And previously, we've seen so many false dawns where they play one or two good games and they completely go back into their shell when they go a goal down, and it's rinse and repeat year after year. But the big thing will now be we'll have Casemiro added to that, which I think is a great signing. Like whatever people want to say about him being 30 years old and signing him for a 5-year deal. I understand you don't want to be paying like Casemiro 20 million a year or 350,000 pounds a week or whatever his weekly wage is. It's high. You don't want to be paying that for 33, 34, 35-year-old. But like United have to do that because otherwise they're not going to get him to leave like Champions League winning Real Madrid. He's only going to leave if they make him a ridiculous ludicrous offer like that, which they need for the short term because as we seen last week, you can't continue with another year, I'm afraid. Now Ericsson looks we'll see how long he plays in that deep playmaker role. Looked good to me last night. I mean, whatever you think, if he doesn't have the legs, he's someone that is at least going to be able to the ball, control the ball, look for the ball, and be comfortable with it. Um, so yeah, good signs for United, but big test for them going forward. Liverpool, that's one of the worst games I've seen in the Klopp era. Like just like what United did to them is what usually Liverpool do to other teams: press, harass, harry teams, and we've seen now with Fulham doing it on the open day and United that like this midfield just doesn't have it. Like not in the form of like Milner, Henderson, and Harvey Elliott, the Brexit midfield. Fabinho came on. He needs to obviously start. I know he got caught out in the Palace goal as they turned them before the Zaha assist, so maybe Klopp punished him for that. But he needs to come back in. Um, and they desperately miss Thiago. Like they'll have Jordan Henderson in there, but they need Naby Keita back. They're missing Diogo Jota. They're missing Joel Matip. It's a bunch of injuries mounting up for Liverpool, and they need to either get someone in before the window, although I don't think they will. I mean, ultimately they're probably holding out for Jude Bellingham next season, and they'd rather spend their money there. They're very calculating how they go about their business, but they're in a hole. And Firmino probably he's like obviously Darwin's not there, suspended. Firmino is there's a reason they probably went out and got Jota and Darwin is because they could probably see signs that he's probably not the guy to lead the line every game. But they need Diogo Jota back up there. This guy that got 15 goals last season to lead the line. So if they have him, Luis Diaz, I'm he was the one that impressed me last night. That guy's in fifth gear all the time. There's no let up. There's no slowing down. Even if Liverpool are slow out of the box, he's 100 miles an hour. And it's what they need in the absence of Sadio Mane. But the other big talking point at the back, like what is up with Trent and Verge? Like that right hand side of the defense, like people are starting to take Van Dijk on where they wouldn't have even thought of it 2 seasons ago. And Trent, like from the Champions League last season, Palace last week, like Mitrovic over the top of him, which to be fair, it's Mitrovic backstick. I mean, how can you really blame him? But like he could have been sent off in that game last night. He kicked out, lashed out at Rashford when he got in behind them. Like he's a sixes and sevens. I don't know if the idea, if the solution there is to necessarily throw Trent into the midfield because I think England tried that and it wasn't exactly a raging success to start with. Even that they played some minnow like Moldova, but yeah, they've got to sort out that right side. Um, because there's holes there and they can be got at. Now they got Bournemouth at home this week at Anfield. Surely that should be lamb to the slaughter, particularly after the Arsenal and City games that we've just seen. But yeah, it's trouble. It's not panic stations. I mean, it will be as far as their title aspirations. They've what 2 points from a possible nine now, and you don't want to concede any ground to Manchester City, just given how automatic they are. But yeah, this is there's some concerns at Liverpool, and this is look ultimately this is what we'll see from Jurgen Klopp. What can he do? I mean, this guy's kind of worked miracles over the last 7 or 8 years when things have been tough and they have had injuries before. It's not the first time they've encountered it. He's found ways. He's tweaked with lineups. He's gotten the best out of players that we didn't think had that level in them. So it's going to be a huge test of his management, but also a stress of the Liverpool board as to do they kind of deviate from their usual plan, strategy, and well thought out, and do they kind of do, get someone in for the short term? I mean, they would have. I mean, as much as they probably sneered at United signing Casemiro, they'd be dying out and crying out for Casemiro just to slot in now. We'd start next week. So yeah, interesting things to monitor going forward. But look, if you like the video, everyone just says like and subscribe, so you might as well like and subscribe. And if you didn't like the video, you're probably not still watching by now. So whatever you are doing, I hope you're enjoying it. But thanks for watching.